Hey, what's going on, everybody? Hope you're doing well today. Today, we're going to be talking about cold calling KPIs. Cold calling KPIs. I'll tell you guys why this topic came up for discussion here in a moment. So, let me go ahead and just post this in my Facebook group. Make sure I'm streaming on YouTube and all that, and then we'll jump into it. So, let's go ahead and do that. Then we'll go ahead and jump into it. So, okay. Hope you guys are having a great day today. Again, just posting in my Facebook group on my Facebook profile, and also just making sure I'm streaming on YouTube. Then I'm going to get into it. Let's see. Okay, cool. As you guys come in, just let me know where you guys are coming from. I always like knowing who's in here. You don't have to drop your name, but just like what part of the country you're in, or what real estate market you're in, because I'll cater my content towards who's ever on the call and give you guys some premium insights here. We're going to be going over how to get more leads this summer too as well. So you guys aren't going to want to miss this if you are cold calling right now. Whether you're cold calling yourself or having a virtual assistant team, I suggest you guys having a virtual team. But if not, this will still be applicable to you. Okay. Oh, you know what, guys? I haven't done this in so long. I forgot to. What's up, Nigel? Appreciate it. Hey, we're going to be going into Excel spreadsheets today. So it's going to be I want to say Excel heavy, but I'm going to be offering a lot of analysis. So definitely appreciate you stopping by. Definitely appreciate you coming by live. Stay however long you can. We're probably going to go for an hour. Don't want to keep you guys too long. I just really appreciate you guys showing up this evening and listening to what I am saying. So give me 1 second. Let me grab this link here. I guess that's fine. I posted the YouTube link in my Facebook group. So, all right, guys, let's go ahead and get into it. All right, guys. So, what we're going to be talking about today are cold caller KPIs. All right. So, why did this topic come about? So, if you guys have been following me for a while, you guys know I've been talking a lot about texting lately. However, I know a lot of investors are still cold calling. I myself am still cold calling. I started talking about texting a lot just because a lot of people that I was interacting with, a lot of investors, guys, they were having trouble generating leads. And I noticed a lot of investors were working solo, like independently. And so texting is great for if you're starting off and specifically if you're working a 9-to-5 job. You need to get a deal today. I highly suggest texting. I'm still really recommending that. But some investors have apprehension about texting, legality. A lot of people that have been buying into my service for my texting setup, they've been people that have been following me for a while. So I know a lot of people on YouTube, like the influencers on YouTube and social media, they don't have great things to say about texting. And so it's a little bit difficult to convince people to text. And I just see a lot of people are still cold calling. So if you're cold calling, great. Love it. This is for you. And I think you're going to take a lot from this. So I want to just pull up my notes here. And we'll go ahead and start. So the first place I'm going to start off is the KPI sheet. And what metrics do I track? What is right? So what do I mean by that? What does right look like? When we talk about cold calling, marketing in general, we need to know what we're aiming for, right, guys? So a lot of people say, I was in a Facebook group earlier, and one young lady was saying that she was having trouble generating leads with cold calling, which is another reason why I wanted to create this Facebook Live and YouTube Live. But she was saying she was having trouble with cold calling. She's in the Texas market, and she just wasn't getting a lot of leads. Well, what's considered a lot? Based off of how much you're dialing, if she's only dialing 1 to 2 hours a day, every day, well, you're not going to get a lot of leads. Cold calling requires you, if you're the owner or the American sitting in that seat, you have to be cold calling at least 4 hours a day. If you can't commit to that consistently, guys, then you need to hire somebody to do it for you, or you shouldn't just do it at all. It's the same recommendation I give to people that do direct mail. If you're going to do direct mail, guys, then I would go all in, right? Dedicate 5 to 6 grand to a direct mail campaign. Now, you can get a deal by targeting a super, super niche list. But even the first deal I got was with direct mail, and I targeted, I think I spent like 3 grand on that direct mail campaign. Now, that was back in 2015, guys. So, you really have to commit to high volume in order to succeed at direct mail and cold calling. So let's talk about what that looks like. So I'm going to ignore this one here. Okay. This could be like date/timestamp. So you always want to date your records. Every day you should be updating your KPIs, either you yourself or your cold caller. Okay. So if you're dialing yourself, you do want to have a KPI sheet. If you want the sheet, just let me know. I'll send it over to you via DM. Okay. But it's pretty standard. We don't do anything funky. I used to track a lot of metrics, like 30, 40 metrics, all the metrics a dialer gave me, but I'm going to talk about which ones are statistically relevant. So the most important, obviously, metric that we're tracking are the leads. How many leads should we be generating a day? I would say 1 to 3 leads a day. If you're outsourcing this to a Philippines team or a team in another area, right? Latin America or Egypt. Now, guys, I know what you'll say. My cold caller is getting 20 leads a day. I'm getting 60 leads a day. I'm exaggerating, but some people may say, well, I get 6 leads a day. That's just ridiculous that you're getting 1 to 3 leads a day. Guys, I know. I've been doing this for a while. I know, like, I've seen some extraordinary things. I'm probably the outlier. I'm talking about if you're doing this yourself. I'm doing this based off of if you're doing it, not what Cece's doing it. So I'm catering this message towards you, not the funky stuff, all the cool stuff I'm doing on the back end to get to maybe 3 to 5 leads a day. I know you guys may not have the resources, capability, or just the marketing knowledge in order to do that, right? Not saying you won't get there, but 1 to 3 leads a day is acceptable. So that's what right looks like. Now, is that enough to get you a deal in the course of a month? Let's see. So you need about 100 leads to get a property under contract with cold calling. I would say 100 to 150, guys. Of course, guys, some people would say, well, I got my first deal calling 20 people. Now, if you're outsourcing, then I would say 100 to 150. I would say 50 if you're calling yourself. Okay, 50 if you're dialing yourself. And you could optimize this, of course, by pulling a really great list. But be mindful, if you get like 1 property under contract out of 20 leads, not dialing 20 people, but out of 20 leads you generated are lower than that, then guys, that's really good. But you most likely dialed a list that's finite. It's probably stacked in a tool using like REI Sift, or you probably got a really nice list of inherited leads, probates, code violations, stacked with some other filters on it from the county. So I'm not talking about the anomaly. I'm talking about scaling. My company, guys, and if you guys are familiar with me, my company name is Build to Scale Real Estate, buildtoscalerealestate.com. I changed it from CC Garland Marketing a few years back to Build to Scale Real Estate. Build to scale. We're building companies to scale. So everything I'm teaching you guys is to scale. If you want to learn how to get a quick deal, I can show you that, and I'll share some ways that you get quicker deals with cold calling. I'm sharing those right now, right, with you, like the list that you could target. Okay. Dialing yourself. Those are ways you get deals quickly with cold calling. Okay. There's some things that you optimize there. However, I would say this scaling, I look at all the principles I'm showing you and teaching you guys is as if I'm running a company like a 7-figure company. Like, what does it take to get to my company to 7 figures a year? Okay. And you can take these same principles and apply them in your business. It's really, if I want to get 1 deal a month or 10 deals a month, the principles are pretty much the same. I would say 2 deals consistently a month, 2 to 3 deals consistently a month, all the way up to 10. The principles are essentially the same. Okay. What you need to do is the same. It's just doing it more at scale. So instead of targeting one list of 10,000 records, if I want to get 10 deals a month, I may have to target a fresh list of 100,000 records across multiple counties, across multiple states, across multiple cities in 1 month. Okay. So it's just doing it more at scale. So everything I'm teaching you guys, you can apply to your company, and just know that these principles aren't anything that are anomalous to you. You can apply these today, okay? And I'm going to be redundant here intentionally. If you hear me repeating things, guys, it's because I really want you guys to realize the things I'm saying, even though they may seem simple, they're really important concepts. All right, I'm going to go just check my chat out, see what we have here. Guys, if you're getting value out of this, or you have any questions or anything I'm saying doesn't add up or doesn't line up, just let me know, guys, for real. I'm here to serve you, not the other way around. I thrive off of feedback. Okay, so let's get into it. Okay, so what am I tracking? Leads. What do we consider a lead? Guys, a lead is any homeowner who wants to sell, regardless of motivation, that are cooperative and or asking for a reasonable price for their house. Let me give you an example. A hot lead, and a lot of investors want to just consider leads like this as leads, and they're really hot leads. So a hot lead, somebody that comes through, the home is worth 160K ARV, the homeowner wants 80,000, so half of the value. And they want to sell now, ASAP. They don't live in the house, they live out of state, and they just inherited the house from their parents. Okay. That's a hot lead. Warm lead is going to be somebody who comes through, has a little bit of motivation. They're looking at moving. They're entertaining some offers. They're getting the house ready for sale. They're inching in that direction. They want to sell in like 3 to 5 months. They may not have an asking price in particular, or their asking price may be around 20% under retail, 20 to 30% under retail. So it's not like a grand slam lead, but there's something there. And that's a great follow-up lead. And guys, if you talk to that person, nurture them, explain your process to them, really, really cater your message to that person, then you can convert that person into a hot lead. Guys, one of the deals I closed years ago, and I love telling this story. We're going to go over to Zillow. This was in 2016, 881 Ashley Avenue in Charleston, South Carolina. So I wholesaled this deal here to a developer, found him on Bigger Pockets. Shout out to you, Jay. You know who you are. Great guy. Found this deal, found the buyer on Bigger Pockets. I did list it, though, before I found this person on Bigger Pockets. But this home right here, this wasn't a structure there. It was a teardown. So when we got it, it looked like this. I'll go back to the street view. Okay, yeah. So when we got this home, it was this structure right here, even in 2015. Yeah. So this one right here. So guys, this was a really cold lead. But I wanted to get this deal so bad because everything on the street was turning around. This is in Charleston, South Carolina. Charleston, South Carolina is just, oh my gosh. It has blown up. It has blown up. It has blown up over the years, guys. And at the time of us in 2015, 2016, when we reached out to this homeowner, she was a recluse. And we thought she lived across the country or across the world. It turns out she lived right down the road, but every single wholesaler, investor, and flipper was trying to get to this home. If you can see right here, I'm not sure if you can see, there's actually mail or piled up newspapers on the doorstep. And I think every month, once a month, the homeowner, Miss Mullen, she would go over and check the mail and take it back to the house. She walked us over here. She lived right down the road. Crazy story. So I lived in Fayetteville at the time, Fayetteville, North Carolina. That's where I got my start in real estate. And turns out that the homeowner's son lived right down the road from where I was working on base. So, I really look at things, guys, like, man, that was nothing but God putting this in my lap, because I went to findtheseller.com. You guys aren't familiar. This is an old school website we use to skip trace homeowners. $10 a search. $10 a search. Don't really recommend that right now. But if you want to do almost like a private investigation search and get all of the relatives for somebody, guys, like, this is the site, but I wouldn't really suggest it now. But we had maybe 100 pages worth of relatives, neighbors, and we called every single one, my business partner and I at the time, probably 10, 12 times. Well, it turns out one of the sons of the homeowner literally lived 3.5 hours, however far away Fayetteville was, from the house. And when I saw that in the report, I was trying desperately to get in touch with the son. I ended up getting in touch with him, telling him, hey, we've been trying to get in touch with your mom. And he gave us the mom's phone number. Guys, that was pure persistence and me making it happen. Okay. So why did I say that? Let's get back to this. Guys, why did I go down that tangent? Give me a second. So what I'm saying here is that, yes, you can generate a deal out of one lead. Like we were manually skip tracing people, and so this was like one of 5 leads we manually skip traced with Find a Seller, and technically we closed one deal out of 5 leads. But it took a lot of effort, energy to get there. And that year we only closed, like 2016. That was my first full year in real estate, doing it full time after I quit my job. Quit my job in January 2016. I think we maybe closed 4 or 5 deals that year because it was my fault. I was like treating this like private investigation work. I was identifying homeowners like this and then like chasing them down. And then the assignment fee was $15K, but after we paid the realtor to list it, even though we found somebody on bigger pockets, we still had to pay the realtor a commission. She made $5K, and other fees involved. We walked away with like $12K, split between my business partner and I. After we took out expenses, it wasn't $6K each. We were left with like $3K each in profit. And I spent like 7 to 9 months chasing this person down. Okay. So the point I'm making here is scaling. You can get deals doing it that way, but that's not scalable. So guys, if you're following me, just understand that my website's Build to Scale Real Estate. That's my company, Build to Scale Real Estate. I'm teaching you guys how to scale here. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and go back to the KPI sheet. And I hope you guys appreciate, some of these examples I'm giving you. I think just illustrating these examples with personal experience that I've gone through will really illustrate what I'm conveying here, right? Rather than just saying, fill out this KPI sheet, put this here. You really want to drive these points home as to why certain fields are here, certain fields aren't, and what's important, what's not. So if you guys want me to clarify, please just let me know. More than willing to. And I'm going to go ahead and check check the chat here. Okay, nothing in the chat. You guys with me? Cool. We got a good little size audience here. Wouldn't know based off of you guys are quiet, but I appreciate you guys being here. And I have a big enough mouth for both of us or all of us on here, so I'll talk the whole time if needed. Okay, guys. So leads. This is manually inputted, right? So I'm going to put manual right here. So this is something that the cold caller or yourself will input. Now, all of these other fields should come from your system. But if you're tracking something like, say, you want to track non-interested manually for some reason, or DNC manually, or callbacks manually, then you just have to make sure if you have a cold call team that they're all tracking it the same way, right? If somebody's considering a callback, somebody who said, call me back later this evening, but another cold caller doesn't consider that a callback. They consider a callback somebody who says, call me back next week. Then you have to get on the same page with your cold callers. That's why I prefer just taking all the data from the system. Now, dialers, guys, your dialers. So some of your dialers some of these dialers, your numbers may not match up with mine. And I'll actually say if that's the case, because what the dialer benchmarks are, what's normal for the dialer. So like I use batch dialer, highly suggest batch dialer, guys, love it. That's the tool I use. I went from there. Before there, I used Ready Mode was like the other dialer I used. I used that for about 2.5 years. In between, I used 5.9, but that was with a company I was consulting. They hired me on as a marketing director, so we used 5.9. But at the end of my term with them, we went back to Ready Mode, ZenCall at the time. I've tried Mojo, tried Call Tools. If you guys ask me like why I like batch dialer or which dialer I prefer, this is what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a dialer that is intuitive. It's easy to use. The interface is slick. It doesn't have all these like crazy buttons and widgets. That's unnecessary for a cold caller. Think about it, guys. We're going to be hiring cold callers. I've hired some cold callers fresh out of high school. At one time, I had over 50 cold callers I was managing back in 2021. I was doing the agency model, selling out cold callers. And that was the most cold callers I had underneath my tutelage at once. And, we had people that, our cold callers were in demand. And so it was difficult finding people that were, I guess, top of their class or have been around for a while. So we had almost like this pipeline where we would train people for a month and they would sit in that pool of training. We will pay them a lower hourly rate during the training. Actually, we paid them a full hourly rate. They just weren't on full time. So they would work like 5-10 hours a week. We paid them up until we had somebody, a client who wanted them, essentially. Not just wanted them, but to place them in a client's company. So our cold callers at the time, they were like 17, 18, 19 years old. Well, guys, I'm not going to overcomplicate the system for them. So I'm not going to use a tool, especially now that has all these AI functionalities that takes forever to learn. I need them to just get onboarded quickly because I need to know sooner than later, preferably in the first week, if I got to get hired. Now, if they don't know how to use the tool, if you're working a full-time job and then they're having trouble with the dialer, then you may not really know if they're a good cold caller up until months later after you wasted thousands of dollars on them. So you don't want your tool to get in the way of you onboarding onboarding a cold caller and knowing if they're actually a good dialer. So, take it from me, guys. Been doing this for a while. If you guys been following me for a while, you know who I am. I'm authentic. I have nothing up my sleeve. I told somebody today, the only thing I won't provide, if you ask me, is just my list pulling providers and connections because I sell data. So, but anything else you ask me, I get my Filipino VAs from onlinejobs.ph. I have a pretty solid hiring process that I use. It's a framework I developed. It's called my Astro type framework. I will be dropping that in the next couple of days. But yeah, your cold callers, guys, you want to make it simple on them to get onboarded. So you got to think, guys, your team, if you're scaling, is going to be the one using the tool, not you. So there's certain tools I use because my team is able to use it and they like it. It's intuitive and it's a lot easier to onboard them in a system opposed to using something that's the slickest, newest tool. And I need to learn how to use it or it's buggy or there's not like an extensive knowledge base. I like using tools that have great support and great knowledge bases, right? Knowledge bases are essentially a library of frequently asked questions where if the caller or if you get stuck, you can go and search for the answer in their knowledge base. Batch dialer support's great too. So love it. So this is what we'll get from the system. So if you're using, let's talk about the dials per day. So if you're using batch dialer, 800 to 1100 dials per day, triple line dialing, that's acceptable. That should get you 1 to 3 leads a day. Okay. If you're using Ready Mode or Mojo, then you can expect about 1500 dials per day on that tool in order to get 1 to 3 leads. If you're using 5.9, guys, 1800 to 2500 dials. And I just finished up my consulting a consulting contract with a client where we were building up their team, and they were consulting me as a marketing director, and they were using 5.9. So this is like the most recent experience I have from several months of dialing at 5.9. I don't suggest 5.9. 5.9 is for brick and mortar companies. It's not for you guys. It's for like banks. It's not for outbound dialing. It's not. Okay. And with this volume too, you're going to be blowing through data. So at this rate, if it takes you 2,500 dials to get 1 to 3 leads, think about that. How quickly are you going to go through a 10,000 record list? So guys, we go in a lot of different directions here. Stay with me, please, because all this connects. This is going to increase your cost per deal. Okay. It's not one factor that decreases your cost per deal. A lot of people think, well, I need to get my data cost down. And that is true. But if you're spending, I don't care if you're spending 3 to 5 cents on data, if it's taking you 30,000 records to get one property under contract because your dialer isn't an efficient use of its data, and it's just blowing through the data wide open, and it goes through 10,000 records in a week, and you need to pull 30 to 40,000 records, well, that's going to 4x your data costs. So you may be thinking, I need to get my data costs down, when you need to just change your dialer. You need to go to a more efficient dialer. Okay, guys, that's why I'm here. I'm here to break these concepts down for you guys. And what I talk about isn't the most trendy or popular thing, or it's not what you want to hear, but it's what you need to hear. I'm being completely honest, nothing up my sleeves because I'm not wearing long sleeves right now. This is what it is. Point blank, period. Okay. So 800 to 2,500 dials per day, right? Depending on your dialer. Connection percentage, I feel this is relatively consistent across the board. You're going to be looking at 12% to 20% connection rates. Now, week 1, your connection rate should be extremely high. So if you are using something like 5.9 or I would say ZenCall or Ready Mode, your connection rate may very well start at 12%. And then it may go down to 5%. I know in batch dialer, it'll start around 20%. And then around the third week of 10,000 records, it'll go down to maybe like 12%, 7%, maybe down to 5%. So your connection percentage, a lot of people may ask me, well, CC, your connection percentage, like you said, it's supposed to be 12%, 20%, but mine is 12%. And then I have to ask all these diagnostic questions. When did you pull your list? How large was your list? Okay, I pulled my list 3 months ago. How large was your list? 2,000 records. So you've been dialing the same 2,000 records for 5 months? Bro, what? Like, no wonder your connection percentage is 1%. It's the list is used up. You already got all the qualified homeowners on it, and then all the people that would have picked up to tell you they're uninterested or interested or take you off the list or DNC. Guys, those people, they're off the list. The list is dead. So again, it's not so linear. Your business, like it's almost like you pull one lever, and if you pull a lever, it can affect 5 different things. It's not like you pull one lever and then it opens up a door or it closes a door. You pull one lever up, it may open up 5 doors. It may open up 3 doors. So I hope you guys get my analogy here. Okay. So connections. What's a decent, how many connections should we get? I would say your connection percentage, because the number will vary based off of the dials that you're getting. Your connection percentage should be around, not 40%. Again, like 12, I would say like 12 to 20%. I put 40% here, and that was really for our internal ops, because that's what I was pushing my team to do. Let's say like 20%, like 12 to 20% is on average what you should be getting. Cold calling is a little bit more saturated, so depending on your market, and because so many people are moved from texting to cold calling, you are going to experience a little saturation. I found that Texas markets, very difficult. Not very difficult. Just your numbers aren't going to look the same as the Midwest or even in the Southeast. So if you're dialing like San Antonio, DFW, Austin, any of those areas, it could be a little bit difficult. And I think the reason too is because number one, the median sale prices are ubiquitously high across any desirable Texas market you want to be in, not the rural areas, but the main MSAs. Okay, and on top of that too, you have if those median sale prices are high, guess what? If you're dialing markets where the median sale prices are at or above 500,000, which a lot of these markets are, you're competing against realtors as well. So, they're cold calling too. Not a lot of them, but if they are cold calling, the brokerages they're doing like high volume. So you're calling the same like demographic. But it should be around 12 to 20% is what I would say. Okay. Wrong number percentage. So again, I'm not going to do numbers. I'm going to do the wrong number percentage. And any percentage I do is and I calculate it's important. Okay. It's important to track. And it's important to monitor, and we can make assessments and not just assumptions, assessments and decisions about how the campaign's performing based off of these metrics. So you want to keep this underneath 2%. If this is above 2%, right? So if I average this out for the whole month and it's above 2%, well, that's going to tell me that that's a data issue. Okay. So here's another thing, guys. Everything connects, right? So a lot of people may say, well, they come to me, well, CC, my cold calling is not good. My cold calling is not performing. I think my caller sucks. Excuse my language, guys. I'll keep it PG. If you have kids around, I keep all this PG. But they may say, hey, my cold calling sucks. And I'm like, okay. They're like, I need to get rid of my cold caller. And the first thing I ask them, do you know what I ask them, guys? I ask them, let me see your KPI sheet. How many investors, other than my people in my tribe, my clients, the people in my community, right? Y'all know, y'all have this. Y'all know to track your KPIs from day one. But outside of that, when people ask me these questions, I would say 90% of them don't have KPIs. Like you can't measure what you can't track. I don't know if it's a cold caller. I don't know if you don't like them. I don't know. We need some numbers, guys. I base things off of numbers, not feelings. Okay. Not off of hunches. So, it could be your data. If you got your stuff from X leads, batch leads. I love batch dialer, but I do not like batch leads. Okay. I wouldn't suggest getting it from there. Or if you got your data from PropStream, guys, I would say that wrong number percentage will probably be pretty high. Hit rates will be high, but the wrong numbers will be high too. They may have 100% hit rate, but your wrong numbers will be around like 40%. Okay. You want to keep this at around 2% or lower. That's how you know you're on track. That's how you know your data is good. Okay. This is how you know if your data source is good. Guys, this is why also too, I don't just change data sources whenever somebody says, oh, I'm using this new data source that has a high hit rate and you get data cheaper. I literally will not know if the numbers are good because I'm not just going to take somebody's word for it. Oh, here's 20 grand. Let me just get your premium data package for a year. No, I don't know if it's good until I put it in my dialer and I track my KPIs over the course of not 1, not 2, not 3 months, several quarters. That's how I know if my data is good or not. Okay. So you can see right here on this cold caller example, these are actual KPIs from a company I was working in as a marketing director, guys, consultant for the last, when was I working with them? Started in November on and off, but I just ended my most recent contract with them. Great company, great team, great guys to work with. And they brought me in to bolster their campaign, right? So these numbers are very recent, and you can see the wrong number percentages. Look, I'm going to highlight this here. I like this color. Okay. Look, it's way underneath 2%. So I'll go slower for you guys. Okay, so look, 0.37, 0%, 1.28%, 1.37, 0%, 1.25. And this really shouldn't change because we're using the same data source. Okay. 0%, 1%, 2.9, 1.2, 103. You guys may be looking at the connection percentages. And so this was back in December. I wasn't on board during this month. I was with them in November. Yeah, I was with them in December, but they didn't start implementing what I suggested until about January and February. Okay. And you can see around February, March, that's when things start to take off. Connection percentage start to increase because guess what? I changed their data source. So the data source they were using, they were getting great wrong number percentages, but they also were getting low connection percentages. That's not good. So I wasn't here months before, but my audit and from my notes, when I look back at this campaign as I was preparing for this live stream, I look back and I'm pretty sure the issue was they were just dialing older data. Okay. So, the wrong number percentage will stay consistent, but the data they were dialing, they essentially were just adding in data here and there, right? Like once a week, they may add like 800 records or 200 records. And eventually they had like 30,000 records they were dialing, but like 90% of the data was from like earlier in 2024. So, whenever they implemented my suggestions, it pretty much started new. Okay. Because I'm pretty sure I was consulting them in November and in December. Then I left for a few months and then I came back a couple months ago. So, but yeah, so connection percentage and then this person's lead rate. Now their leads were low. They got 57 going back in December. That's not really good. But they were averaging 0.5 a day. Okay. And then this cold caller was averaging about 1 a day, which was decent. But I think also too, there were I was just a consultant guy. So just because there were some things I recommended that weren't implemented, which was changing the dialer. And I think the dialer was a big reason why they weren't able to hit the lead flow every day. One of these callers was really good, but majority of them, they were suffering because they simply just weren't making enough dials to hit enough leads per day because 5.9 requires more dials per day to get a certain number of leads. Okay. So what I suggest for you guys, if you're not using batch dialer, if you are tracking your KPIs, I would look, if you have 30 days of KPIs, that's awesome. I would look and just see on average how many total calls you have and then how many leads you have. Average that out. If it's 2,000 and you're averaging 1 lead a day, then you need to keep that at 2,000, right? If you go lower, then you're going to risk not getting any leads per day. That's just what your dialer demands. I wish that wasn't the case, but you need to get more dials in order to get X amount of leads under contract for certain dialers. But I'm all about efficiency, which is why I want the least amount of dials, total calls from the system. Okay. I want the least amount of dials and total calls from the system in order to get 1 lead. So ideally, if I could call 10 people and get 1 lead, that would be amazing. But, that's not realistic. But, if I could get like 500, I had a dialer once, I had a caller once, guys. They literally were getting like 2 leads a day consistently from 500 leads, 500 dials. I think it was a combination. They were a great cold caller, but it was an anomaly. The data was good, but my other dialers were dialing the same data. The metrics were I think it was the market and then the list we were dialing, and then the caller was just really good. Those things in conjunction. And that didn't stay like that for the long haul, but it stayed like that for several weeks, which I thought was very impressive. I'm going to check and see if we have any questions. Okay, guys. So Nigel asked, how did you find that lead? What was the lead source? Okay, so that was 27. Okay. Can you jog my memory, Nigel? Because I'm checking my chat, but I can't see my chat. when I'm screen sharing. So if you could just jog my memory, how did I find that lead? What was the lead source? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so you're talking about disregard 881 Ashley Avenue. Okay, so that lead, that was driving for dollars. Yeah, so 881 Ashley Avenue, that was driving for dollars. That was literally just driving around town and just looking at that house. And at the time, all these homes were being appraised for like 700K. That home was new rehab to the left. This home was new rehab on the right at the time. And the whole area was turning around. So it was basically like the ugliest house on the block. Now it's the nicest house. And I told I just had a conversation with the buyer on Bigger Pockets the other day, Jay, and I told him, I said, hey man, that was a spec build, this little nice craftsman build. Haven't seen the inside, but I mean, it's amazing what he did with the house. Was able to preserve a little bit of the yard and the front yard, and yeah, just really, really nice property, guys. Really nice property. But yeah, so this was just driving for dollars. So my business partner and I at the time, we would just, when I was living in Fayetteville, I would go back home twice a month. Okay. And every weekend we would drive for dollars in the area. And then we would write down the addresses. And then when I would get back to my house, my apartment in Fayetteville on Sunday evening, I would write postcards myself and then send them off. I thought I was doing something. I was sending off like 10 letters. 10 letters a day or 10 letters a week, which was nothing. So I didn't get any calls back, which is why we did a direct mail campaign. But yeah, we closed this deal up, and yeah, that was driving for dollars right there. Great question. Okay. All right. So let's go back here. I'm going to go on for maybe about 10, 20 more minutes, and then we'll get off here. Let you guys enjoy your evening. If you guys have any questions, let me know, please. So connections. All right. So we already talked about that connection percentage. That's going to be around, again, 12 to 20% on a new list. One of the questions I get is, when should I change my list? Okay. Hey, this is a bit of a loaded question, but I would say a rule of thumb, if dialing 10,000 records, this list should last for 3 to 4 weeks. If it doesn't last for that long, guys, what you're going to be experiencing is a situation where you're going to be running out of data in like the second week. I wouldn't look at, I made a note here. I would not look at what the list health is in your system. It may be deceiving. So I've had dialers, maybe not batch, but other dialers that said the list was at like 80% health, right? It's only been used 80%. And we're like 4 weeks in dialing it. And my cold caller is telling me it's taking more time to connect to a homeowner. So what does that tell me? That tells me that I probably need to change the list, because the longer it takes for you to connect to a homeowner, that basically means it's just dialing, and it has no like qualified people to dial. You basically called all the people and got all the people off the list that would either pick up, tell you not interested, DNC, hang up on you, and all that. So you're just dialing basically people that would just never pick up for a cold call, essentially. So that's something you're going to have to ask your cold caller. So in the first week, they should be getting connected like that. Meaning, if they get off the call with one homeowner, it should connect to another one within like 30 seconds. It should be really quick. In the second week of dialing 10,000 records, it'll probably take maybe like a minute, 2 minutes. Third week may take a minute to like 5 minutes. Fourth week, you might be getting around 5 to 15 minutes. You have to ask your cold caller this. So, maybe not the first or second week, but one thing I always ask my dialers, hey, how long is it taking to connect to a new homeowner? So if they tell me it's taking like 5 to 10 minutes to connect to another homeowner, and we're 4 weeks in dialing, 3 to 4 weeks dialing the list, I know it's time to pull a new list. Excuse me. I know it's time to pull a new list, regardless of what the dialer's saying. So you need to look at those things in conjunction, right? You need to ask your dialer how long it's taking, ask your cold caller how long it's taking you to connect to a new caller, new homeowners, and then you need to ask them, or then you need to determine, okay, when did I pull that list last? Which is why we also have our cold callers. Every cold caller fills out the sheet, and they're required to put the campaign in it. So I know when I look at my KPIs, I'm like, okay, for the last, how many days? 16 days. So, going into the third week, we've been dialing this list. So if I start seeing, if I pulled a list maybe of like 5,000, 6,000 sellers, and then I start seeing that it's taking longer to connect to people, my cold caller saying that, they say that, and then it looks like it's just they're not generating leads when they were generating like 2 to 3 leads per day for the first 2 weeks. I know that I probably need to pull a new list at that point. Okay. But general rule of thumb, 10,000 records with batch dialer or Mojo, because Mojo and batch have similar dialing behaviors. That should last about 3 to 4 weeks. Okay. So you should just budget for new data 3 to 4 weeks. Now, if what I'm saying doesn't hold true for your dialer, you need to make the decision, do I change dialer to a more efficient one, or do I stick with my current dialer and just either change my data source to a cheaper one, or just stick with what I have and try to get a higher assignment fee, because your cost per deal will increase if you are having to pull twice as much data because your dialer isn't efficient. Okay. Now look and see if we have any questions. Okay, cool. All right, last thing I'll go over, guys, is the wrong number. We went over that. Not interested. So not interested will vary. I don't really have a metric for that. DNC will vary. So this is if somebody says put me on do not call list. Not interested is if somebody clearly says they're not interested. Callback is anybody that says, hey, call me back. There's usually a dispositions filter in your dialer that has a callback button on it. And then voicemail, obviously it goes to voicemail. So all of these metrics, and there may be more in your system. So all these metrics, whatever you're tracking, should add up to the total dials. Now, these metrics aren't going to add up because I'm not. These are just these are practice numbers I put in here, example numbers. But all these metrics that you're tracking, and you may track more in yours, should total this number. But if you don't want to track something like, or if something's redundant, like it's like, I know there's a filter where it says connections, and then let's see here, it's connections, and no, it was total calls and actual dials. So this was just in the company I was working with. They wanted to put everything from 5.9 in here, which I understand. But this to me is like the same or redundant. Like I don't know. I just didn't like that they had actual dials. I don't know what that was, and I just never tracked that before. So I just, I wouldn't track that. The important thing here, guys, is that you compare apples with apples. So if everything's off, you want to make sure it's all off across the board. So like if you at one, for the first month you were tracking total calls from the system, and then like let's just say in December, they were tracking total calls. And then they said, well, you know what? We actually want to track actual dials. And then you started putting actual dials in the total calls field. I wouldn't do that. I would just create a separate field and then just hide this one or leave that be. Because what's going to happen is it's going to look off, because you're going to say, man, we had a lot more dials in December, and you may forget that you told your team to start using actual dials in January, and then it's just going to throw everything off. So if whatever you're tracking, just make sure it's all correct, all the same across the board. Okay. Hope that makes sense. And then not interested. Okay. DNC, callback, voicemail. Those are pretty self-explanatory. So the statistically relevant fields, I would say the ones that are really important to get right is if your lead flows at 1 to 3 leads a day, guys, honestly, I don't really care like what these other dials are, or what these other metrics are. I'm like, if this is like, 3, 2, 3, 1, 3, 2, 3, 2, 1, 3, and it's like that for like several months, and the leads are actually decent, guys, I'm not like, play ball. There's like literally no need to look at this other stuff. You're on track. Don't fiddle around with it. There's nothing you can do to optimize really your cold calling campaigns to outside of them dialing longer in the day. But there's only so much dialing they could do in a day through the TCPA laws. What most cold callers work 8-hour shifts. That's about all they have. So guys, that's about 1 to 3 leads a day. Yep, you could possibly get 4 to 5, but I'm talking about investor leads. If you're a realtor, then you could get maybe like 3 to 5 a day if you're depending on what you consider a lead. But for investors, I would say like 1 to 3 is like decent, right? That's that's on point. I've tried to optimize it. Can't really do any more than that. Can't really do any more than that. That's just what it is. So at that point, if you want to get multiple cold calling contracts in a month, you're going to need to get a portfolio, 5 to 6 potentially cold callers. You could get it done with maybe like 2 to 3 cold callers, depending on the list you're dialing. But you definitely want to have like if you're just cold calling and you want to close more than like 3 deals a month, you probably want to have like 5 cold callers on staff, right? That's what I would suggest. Okay. And then the next thing I'm looking for, so if my dials are off, if my lead flow is low, right? For instance, this is a real example here. We had a cold caller, and she was not sitting in this seat. And I got onto the team about this, and her numbers increased. But I told him, I said, hey, she's not sitting in the seat, because you can't really BS me, guys. And you guys take this to heart as well. Cold callers will lie. I mean, they're entry level guys. Like, they might be working another job. You just don't know. But if they're, and I will know if they're actually sitting in the seat, because the number of dials. You can't tell me if your dials look like this, 400, 200, 300, like, yeah, and you're dialing full time. No. I refuse to believe that. You're not dialing full time. So I don't have like hub staff or whatever tools are used to track the performance, or to watch like the performance of my team members, because I know if they're getting this from the system, obviously they can make this up, but I can go into system, my team can go and see if they're making it up. But if these numbers are like at 1100 or higher, I know they're sitting in the seat. They were dialing. And some days they're just not going to get leads, right? So if their leads are above 1100 and then they're not getting any leads, I need to see if it's the list, the dialer, right? Is it time to change dialers? Do I need to increase it from 3 lines to maybe 4 or 5 lines to get my calls up, because my dialer just may be inefficient? Or I'm going to look at the cold caller's performance, right? I'm going to look and see if they're competent. But notice, guys, I have a checklist. I don't just go and like say, oh, the cold caller, they're not generating leads, get rid of them. Like, there's so many factors that are dependent on you as the investor as well, that determines whether or not the campaign is successful. We're a team, guys. The Army taught me to throw people underneath the bus. It took me a while to unlearn that. I don't throw my team members underneath the bus, right? But if there's blame to be put on somebody, I am going to put the blame on them, but it's going to be after I've checked off all the blocks and made sure I put them in the best position to succeed, right? Do they have a fresh list, right? That's why I don't change a lot of variables. That's why I don't change my dialer. That's why I don't change my data source, because I know the only variable whenever somebody's dialing for me is going to be the market and the list. But other than that, all the other variables stay the same. So if they're not performing well and my other cold callers are, I know it's on them. This prevents cold callers from gaslighting me. I cannot get gaslit. I've seen so many cold callers try to actually actively gaslight like their employers and say, oh, I'm getting a lot of wrong numbers. Okay, guys. Well, we know what an acceptable wrong number is. They're going to be getting a lot of wrong numbers, compared to what? It's part of cold calling. They're going to get a lot of people that say they're not interested. They're going to get a lot of people that hang up. That's cold calling. That's cold marketing. So if they're complaining about that, then they're probably not the right fit for the job. Okay? Very important. Last thing I want to show you guys is there was I just made a video on hiring cold callers. So I want to find that there because there's I'll just go to Canva here. Give me 1 second, guys. And I'll open up your questions here. All right. So, hey, Jermaine, so good to see you here, my friend. Do you prefer the multi-line over single line dialing? Hey, great question. Great question. So I'll get to that question in a moment because I do not want to lose my train of thought. So I'm going to answer that here in a second. Okay. So great question. Before I get to that, I do want to show you guys this pretty cool graphic that I created. Oops. Okay, so cool. So if you guys haven't seen it, I just posted this video today. Start working on this video last week. I just got it uploaded today. Essentially, like, right, why your cold calling may fail. I'm not going to rehash it all, but I do want to focus on this graphic here. Okay, so the cold caller, and this isn't an exhaustive list, but the cold caller, the responsible party. So competency, that's what they're responsible for, right? So they're responsible to be competent at their job. So I do not hire anybody who doesn't know how to cold call. Maybe in 2016, 2017, but there's so many Filipino cold callers and then in other nationalities as well, where they either have friends or have worked for other companies where they got the basics of dialing, okay, of learning how to dial. So I don't train people from scratch. So you just have to know what you're doing, just off the rip. Does that mean I hire them and I just let them do whatever? No, guys. I have an onboarding training process and we are nurturing that person. We have a trajectory for every single caller in our system, okay, that comes into our system. We don't just let them just do whatever, okay? And that can make the cold caller feel like they're not supported if you don't, offer them with some type of support. But the time and seat and the number of dials, that's their responsibility. Showing up, that's their responsibility. As an investor in the cold calling process, you're responsible for an onboarding process, okay? What does that mean, guys? I would say the onboarding process lasts 90 days, right? It's just not the first day. When they come on board, you need to have a system or a process where that person knows who they're reporting to, when to come to work, what their pay rate is. You should have them sign some type of employment agreement so it just feels official. They feel like they're part of a company, guys. Okay, super important. Training schedule, auditing their calls. You or somebody else should be doing this. This is why I don't recommend, if you're working a 9-to-5 job, I really don't recommend you hiring callers directly. I recommend you using an agency, but a lot of these agencies, guys, they just are not great. And also, too, shameless plug, I am offering VA services, cold callers, lead managers, acquisitions managers, both American and virtual, as well as dispo managers and operations managers. So if you guys need that, hit me up, because the real reason why I'm doing it, and I hesitated with this, guys, the real reason why I'm doing it is I've seen what other companies have to offer, and it just blows. Like, excuse my language, guys. I've seen some investors pay $12 an hour for literally people that don't even know how to talk on the phone. They don't have a great accent, don't even have the right qualities for the caller. And on top of that, the agency isn't even doing any ongoing training. At that point, I would just do a placement fee for like $1,000 and then just give the cold caller to the investor. Because if you're staying in the middle and you're charging like $12 an hour, because I know they're paying the cold caller $5 to $6 an hour, you need to be offering some sort of support. But a lot of those cold callers are not great. Trust me. I was working with a few teams in the past couple months where I witnessed this. And that's actually what made me realize, Cece, you need to get back into the game. You need to start offering VA services again. So I'm doing team building and all that. So if you guys need help with that, just hit me up and I got you taken care of. But you need to have an onboarding process, guys. What does this entail? Again, acclimating them to your company. I would say the 80-20 of this is them being able to have somebody to go to for support. If they're on board, if they start dialing and then you're working a 9 to 5 job, or you're out in the field locking up contracts and they're home in Slack, and they're messaging you and they don't have anybody to reach out to, they may stay on board for a week or two, but they're going to be either working another job or on your dime or leave. So a lot of people may say, I've heard a lot of investors say, this cold caller, they were horrible and they left. They weren't dependable. And guess what I asked them? What did your onboarding process look like? Did you have a way for them to contact you when they had questions? Just because you hire somebody who's great at the job, and I think I mentioned this too. Yeah. Just because you hire somebody great at the job, right, doesn't mean that they don't need to be managed or guided. Okay, so many investors assume that a cold caller with a great background does not need to be managed or guided, and that's just furthest from the truth. Okay, guys. So we really want to be able to. I don't care how stellar they are. They need to feel like they're part of the team, especially if they're virtual. Okay. And what that looks like for me is I have daily check-in calls with my team members, my operations manager, and then they're the ones who check in with their team members. What this looks like is, in Slack, we have a Slack workspace where all the cold callers in the morning, they say good morning. So we know that they're there. In the afternoon or in the evening when they leave, they send us their KPI sheet, and then they say good night in Slack. Okay. They can do that through Slack. If you don't use Slack, email, right? So some way to check in, check out, some way for them to check in and to check out. Something simple as that, okay? Technical support. So if they get stuck on a dialer issue and it's inevitable to happen, right? The dialer may not be performing well. They may have issues uploading their list. Those types of things. In the first 90 days, that's really on you or your operations team. So if you're, again, working a full-time job, it's going to be very difficult to put that cold caller in a position to succeed. Okay. So I'm trying to deliver this in a way, guys, where it's not coming across like, I'm trying not to be hard on you guys, but we're all big boys and big girls here. Okay. You guys might need to hear this, and there's no way to sort of mince my words. A lot of investors want to just play the victim, and then assume everything else is somebody else's fault. And that's not the case. Things changed for me when I read Extreme Ownership. I always mispronounce the gentleman's name, but by Jocko Willink. He was a retired Navy SEAL. Gravitated towards it because I'm an Army vet. But love his book on extreme ownership. The 80-20 of that book is essentially just take ownership of everything. Even if it doesn't seem like it's in your purview, you got to take ownership of everything. So I take ownership whenever the cold callers stop showing up to work, because I'm like, I made a bad hire in the hiring selection. So the more that you take extreme ownership, the less of these problems you're going to have and the better team members you're going to get. Okay. External factors, which still sort of fall on the investor, will be your market selection. If your dialer's buggy and your lead quality, right? So your lead quality, some guys, some days the fish aren't biting. Some weeks the fish aren't biting. So I don't really, if I know the cold caller was performing well and they've generated some high quality leads for me, there just may be something in the air for a week or two in that market where the lead quality is low. They can control how many leads they generate by the number of dials they dial in a day. But, the lead quality, I can't really fault them on that. Now, if it's a consistent thing, or if it looks like they're not sending over leads with any information on them, it's just like this person wants to sell and they're not qualified at all, then we may need to have ongoing training for competency, but that person should have never been hired because the people I hire already understand the script. So that may just be an issue with laziness and then that just goes into the whole process of offboarding that person, firing that cold caller. Okay. So again, if you're having issues here, you can look at your KPI sheet, look and see, each one of these metrics, each one of these metrics would tell you where the problem is. And then you can use this matrix here, this little chart that I created, to determine, okay, is it on me or is it on the cold caller? Okay. And I'll give you guys an example. So again, I just use the total calls from the system. That's a cold caller. All right. That's a cold caller issue. Okay. I'm not the one sitting in the seat, right? If I gave them the dialer, if I onboarded them, if they have the login and they're competent and they said they're competent and they said everything right on the interview, then that's on them. Okay. So I'm not going to blame myself at that point for them not dialing. I'm going to be like, okay, I'll give you one day, but you better figure out the next day. If their dials are low the next day, okay, hey, what's going on? Dials are low the third day, guys. I would get rid of somebody in a week. if there's nothing wrong with the dialer, all my other dialers, I have like 10 dialers right now, 10 cold callers roughly that are dialing for me. If I have, if my dialers, all my other 9 are performing well, and then I bring this new dialer on, and then their settings are the same in the tool, they're dialing the same list, and they're simply not getting the dials in. Guess what, guys? I'm comfortable with making that fire after a week, because all you got to do is sit in the seat. That tells me you're avoiding the work. Okay. Now, if it was just them and then I didn't have anything to compare it with, and it's a new market, new list, then I would, maybe I haven't used a dialer before, or I haven't used that dialer in a while, or they just updated their system. Okay, maybe I'll give them some leeway. But that cold caller can't gaslight me and say, it's the list. Oh, the dialer isn't good. We should switch dialers. Nope, don't even try it, baby. Because the only variable is them, essentially, because all my other dialers have the same variables. List criteria is the same. The list tool we're using is the same across the board. The markets are basically the same markets. We're not going to have this person dialing in like New Jersey when everybody else is dialing in the Midwest and like Cleveland, Columbus and stuff. So really the only variable will be the market, but I know the markets I'm in are solid markets and would generate leads and I get cooperative sellers. So the only variable and wild card is the cold caller at that point. So I eliminate all the factors that could essentially make me think that dialer, that I'm not providing something to the dialer, to that cold caller, rather. So I eliminate all the factors and wild cards, so I know whether or not that cold caller will perform well on day one, and if they're performing well on day one. I'll give them a day or two to get acclimated. By that third or fourth day, if I'm not seeing their dials, it's like, hey, man, you're not going to have a job by Friday. And I have a rule. If you miss a day of work in the first 30 days, no exceptions, you're fired. If you're a cold caller, no exceptions. And I've heard too many times my aunt, grandma, uncle, mother, it's never their mother. It's always like a grandma or an uncle died. I've heard it too much, and they're just BSing you at that point. Okay, guys, let's get to this question here. And guys, thank you for sticking with me here. All right, so Jermaine asked, okay, do you prefer multi-line over single-line dialing? Okay, the reason why I waited to answer this question is because, like me, it's a little bit, there's always exceptions to the rule. So I prefer multi-line dialing for general cold calling list, right? Large list, high equity, absentee, those types of lists. I prefer single line dialing if you're dialing as the American, as the owner, or if you have your acquisitions team dialing. If you're targeting an inherited list, probate list, or even a cash buyer list, Jermaine, absolutely, I would dial single line with those lists. But your virtual assistants, 99.9% of the time, multi-line, and specifically 3 lines. 3 lines. Oh, this is a metric I did not share with you all that I need to share. I don't think I have it on here, just because if all these metrics look like they're on par with what we're tracking across the board, this other metric takes care of itself. But the abandonment percentage, so your abandonment percentage should be, to stay legally compliant, guys, within the TCPA laws and regulations. Those are regulations that the government put in place to regulate cold calling. Okay, they need to be at 3% or lower. Okay, 3% or lower. So if it's above this, I'm not saying the FBI is going to come to your door and shut you down, but you don't want this to be any higher either, because it lets me know you're blowing through data. So abandonment percentage is this. So if I'm calling, you guys probably have experienced this. So if I'm calling, if I'm cold calling, I'm dialing a triple line dialer. Let's say all 3 people pick up, it can only connect to one. So the dialer is going to choose which one to connect with, and then it's going to drop the other 2. So, and it'll rotate them back in, but it's just going to drop the other 2. So that doesn't happen most likely with 3 lines. But if you're dialing like 10 lines, yeah, you're going to most likely be connecting with multiple people at once. And I've experienced that recently, because I rarely pick up for cold calls, but I do sometimes whenever I'm in a sociable mood, which rarely happens. Well, it happens sometimes, but not in my work day usually when they're dialing. But I'll pick up the phone, and guess what? I'll be like, hello. nobody's answering. I'm like, oh, they're cold calling. And I know that was a telemarketer, because they're most likely dialing like 10 lines at once just to see who they can get in touch with. And then it's going to drop several lines. I just don't like that, especially if you're, guys, a lot of us, we want to be thrifty here, and, unless you have it like that, even if you do, I just don't suggest it. Like, so what if you have a $20,000 budget to blow just on data a month? It's just not efficient to waste quality data, unless you're just calling a general homeowner list with anybody who bought a home in the house and or in that area in the last 30 years. But if you have filters on your list, you really want to treat your data like it's gold, and you don't want to be wasteful of it. So you don't want to just dial, 6, 7 lines wide open. Most dialers, they by default, they're at 3 lines. Sometimes I'll go up to 4 lines, maybe 5 lines. I had to do that actually with this company that I was working with, just because 5.9, we weren't getting any leads. They weren't getting any leads based off of them dialing 800 to 1,000, 1,100 dials a day. So we needed to, the metrics aren't reflected here, but the metrics really looked, by the time I left that company, it was like 2,500 dials a day. And it was like 1 lead. So they had to dial 2,500 to get 1 lead. And the last I heard, because I placed an operations manager with them, I spoke to the operations manager last week, and the last I heard is they are switching from 5.9 to another dialer. And I think it's going to be batch. So your tools can make or break you guys. It can really cause your marketing costs to be quite high. And it's not direct, guys. And these things that I'm sharing with you guys, these are not things that were taught to me, and they were not things that guys, even 5.9, I was working with a company, and they were paying a technical account manager $3,000 a month. This was back in 2020. Company I was working with here in Charlotte as a marketing director. Paying this guy $3,000 a month, didn't even know these answers. I had to go down a rabbit hole and figure out all this myself. Okay, so all of this is self-learned, it's self-taught, and you can feel confident that I'm giving you the right information and correct information, because this is actually from live field work, like in the field, actively. I'm wholesaling just like you right now. So, I love teaching. I do have my consulting company. I'll talk about, just some ways I can help you guys here in a second before we wrap up. But I'm wholesaling full time. That's how I pay my bills, right? That's how I live the lifestyle I live. I'll never not, because honestly, I'm paranoid, and it's maybe a little bit superstitious, even though I'm in a really good situation right now. But it's what got me out of my 9-to-5 job and saved me whenever things were dark in my life. whenever I quit my 9 to 5 job. Wholesaling saved me, not anything else. Not consulting, not affiliate marketing, not anything else. It's wholesaling. So I just love this, and I'm really at the point too where I'm starting to acquire properties, but land for buy and hold and appreciation potential. That's really the name of the game that I'm on right now. So any of these markets, I'd tell you guys, if you have land, not mainly infill lots. I'll look at commercial land, but infill lots in the Midwest. I could give you guys some markets. I'm looking to acquire some lots just to hold on to, because next thing you know, in a couple of years, I may look up and be like, oh man, I have an offer on a lot for $100K and I spent $2K on it. Right? That's really where I'm at right now, and I love land. Okay, guys, so that's going to wrap this up. One last question here. Okay, so Jermaine asked, the reason I noticed with multi-line dialing, you get more dials, but the connection rate was pretty similar as single line. Okay, and okay, so so your connection rate is going to be the same. So, okay, great question. So your connection rate will be the same, Jermaine, as your triple line dialer, because really the only thing you're doing is, think of it like this: you're dialing. Imagine you have 3 single phone numbers. So if your data is the same, which is going to be if you're triple line dialing as a single line dialer, your data quality is going to be the same. That's not going to affect your connection rate. Now, okay, there's always exceptions to the rule, and I don't want to. Okay, so I'll go there. Yeah. So okay, so single line dialing, I would expect a higher connection percentage, only because if I'm dialing a more targeted and niche down list. Does that make sense? So if I'm dialing single line dialing, it's going to be because I'm dialing a really solid list and I paid for the most premium skip tracing on it. Okay. And then I know that list is going to be really solid as far as the data is going to be updated, right? The phone numbers and everything. Yeah, that could boost my connection percentage. But theoretically, and what I've seen in practice, your multi-line dialing and your single line should be the same, but there's so many other variables that can factor into that. Could be like, how fresh is the list that you're single line dialing versus the multi-line dialing list, right? There's just a lot of other factors, but I would say just 90% of the time it will be the same. If you could elaborate, please, let me know, and I'll answer that for you, okay? So, guys, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up here, but I do want to mention a few things to you guys, just housekeeping. If you requested to join the Build to Scale group, I am going to start adding people into that. I just had to change just some things in the group here. Updated, I have about 20 people I need to add in the group. Going to start posting a lot more content. I also did update the group where I will be allowing people to post. The last several years, I really been focused on my business, my consulting business and everything. And so I haven't been able to really monitor when people post and stuff, and I didn't want any spam. I'm very mindful of that. So I just been posting myself, and I've been a little bit inconsistent, but if you guys want to post in there, start communication, start conversation, please, by all means, do that. Also, too, I have a chat, guys. Guys, I have a chat, but for some reason, in the intro post, this chat hasn't been working. Let me see here. I might just need to create a new chat. It was a wholesaler's lounge. But yeah, this is a pretty good chat. But I'll probably create a new one, because for some reason this when I post this link, it doesn't. Maybe you guys could click on it in the chats area, but whenever I post a link, it doesn't go to the actual chat feed. Okay, guys. Another thing, guys, just before you get off here, if you guys need help setting up your text messaging accounts, so what I'm doing right now, buildtoscalerealestate.com, guys, we are setting up about probably 10 of these a month. And so if you guys need REI reply setup, if you guys want to be able to texting works like 10 times better than cold calling right now. But I did the cold calling thing because I see a lot of people need help with cold calling. But if you want to get set up with 10 DLC compliance on the first time and be set up to go and text in a week, guys, all my clients are getting great results. It's like night and day with cold calling. So you can either just have us set it up for you for one time, or our pro plan, we can do the essential. We can set it up and pull a list for you. So about half my clients go with the essentials plan and the other half the pro plan. Shameless plug there, guys. I'm also doing VA setup. So if you guys need cold callers, hit me up because I'm placing them, and I'm also building teams out where I'm building out your whole marketing and lead generation team virtual. So the virtual team is much less expensive than the if you want an American. So doing that. So if you guys need help with that, just let me know. Feel free to hit me up. Feel free to hit me up if you have any questions too, guys. Any other questions at all? Anything? Okay, guys. So I'm going to go ahead and get off here. If you do have anything, hit me up on Facebook, guys, or on YouTube. And I will see you guys next time. I might go live tomorrow or Thursday. So see you guys later. Bye.